the weekly show with David J. Maloney. This week, David talks to Humans of Dublin photographer Peter Varga. And now, here's your host, David J. Maloney.
Welcome to everyone at home, and I would normally say our studio audience to the weekly show. I am your host, David J. Maloney. I say normally because we usually shoot the show before a small studio audience at the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino, but we are still shooting from home due to coronavirus concerns. For those of you who regularly watch the show, you'd know our house band on the set is usually the Mogiles. But being as we are shooting from home, sitting in for them today is my son, Gianni. Before I start my monologue, I'd like to take a moment to send our thoughts and prayers to the victims of Hurricane Zeta. My home was surrounded by surge in Sally, but thankfully, although we lost a lot of what we loved outside, our home itself was spared. During Ivan in 2004, our home took over 6 feet of water, so I know firsthand what so many people on the Gulf Coast are going through. It was horrible on us then, and I'm sure it's horrible on a lot of people now. So just know we're thinking and praying for you, and if your insurance company drags its feet or otherwise yanks you around, well, you know who to call. So, this past Sunday, we gained 1 hour by setting our clocks back, and I took full advantage of it. I went swimming immediately after eating. And in Chicago, multiple overdoses have been connected to a man who has been handing out free heroin. Experts say this is precisely why you should only trust reputable heroin dealers. And in Las Vegas, Wayne Newton claims Elvis Presley's ghost appeared to him personally. In a related story, doctors now say extensive Botox can cause hallucinations. Speaking of doctors, I've concluded my dermatologist makes rash decisions. Yeah, that's a thinker. And according to a new medical report, eating an early dinner may lower the risk of cancer, which is why I've started eating dinner in the morning and, of course, breakfast at night. Speaking of food, the world's most expensive pizza can be found in the Industry Kitchen restaurant in Manhattan. A large pie is $2,000, plus $1 for each additional topping. And lastly, a recent study shows a chemical in McDonald's French fries supposedly promotes hair growth. Unfortunately for me, there's one huge side effect. Yep, one huge side effect. On tonight's show, we've got a really cool guest who's doing incredible work in and around Dublin, Ireland. You may have seen social media posts involving or otherwise heard of Humans of New York. Most of us have. What many don't know is that page sparked creativity in a lot of other storytelling photographers across the globe. And one of them, one of the most well-known and largely followed, is Humans of Dublin. Well, we are pleased to welcome its creator, Peter Varga, to our show tonight. So don't go anywhere, stick around, and we'll be right back. G? And we are back. Our featured guest tonight is doing fantastic work telling stories in his community in and around Dublin, Ireland. His page, Humans of Dublin, has hundreds of thousands of followers across social media, and his stories and portraits have shed light on countless communities, foundations, and people groups in Ireland who would never have had such exposure without him. Please give a warm weekly show welcome to Mr. Peter Varga. Peter, welcome to the show.
Hi, how you doing, David? Thanks for you having me.
I'm sure many of our audience will have heard of Humans of Dublin, and I know that a lot of people follow Humans of New York here in the States. Tell us what Humans of Dublin is and a little bit about yourself, behind the lens.
Right. So everyone probably knows Humans of New York already, and he was doing it already about 2 years when I discovered it through my girlfriend. My dream was to become a photographer, but I knew that if I want to be a successful photographer, I will have to specialize for something. So when my girlfriend, now my wife, introduced me to Humans of New York, that was combined two things that I really love. I love talking to people and the photography itself. And by the time I finished the course itself, I had more followers on my Facebook page than the school itself. And from then on, I just didn't stop.
In my mind, this is very skilled work that you do. How do you go about getting people to open up to you and tell you their stories? I mean, some of these stories are really, really personal.
Yeah, probably it's all about practice. The first part of the whole project was really on the streets. I was going out to the streets every single day, 5 days a week, and I was planning with a plan to approach 8 to 12 people. And from those, like most of them obviously was like I didn't have a background how to interview people properly. I'm not even from Dublin myself. I'm originally from Hungary. So it was all about practice, and by people turning me down and really wanting to make it work, eventually started to work. The most important thing probably is not even about the questions, it's about your interest. People will feel that you are truly interested in their stories, and when they feel that, they make them feel more comfortable and they open up.
And do you think that people, I mean, my experience has been that people, as a species, we kind of do want to tell our stories, don't we?
Absolutely. And especially like this time that is becoming more and more serious, people are becoming more lonely, and they obviously have the stories to tell as well. And what I realized that everyone has a story to tell. You just have to ask the right questions to get it,
Well, and it's like when you're asked a question, sometimes it's harder to keep silent than it is to answer. It's some innate need that we have in ourselves, to communicate, isn't it?
To actually share it. That's right. Yes. The one of the things I always like to highlight that I never get to meet my grandparents. They died before I was born, and I always missed those conversations or having the opportunity to ask those questions that you would ask for your grandparents. And actually, throughout the years, I used Humans of Dublin to meet elderly people and ask the questions that I couldn't ask from them. And some of those interviews became the most successful interviews as well.
How have most of your portraits and stories come about? I mean, do you just go out on the street and just
Yes, I used to be walking around 6 to 8 hours on the street. Now it's a little different, and obviously because COVID came around as well. In the beginning, I was trying to create interviews online, but as you can feel it as well. Probably you usually have live guests and everything. Probably people are. It's not the same, especially when you're trying to have an honest and really long conversation with someone. So what I'm doing now is actually raise awareness through real life stories, and I partner up with different companies and charities that they would highlight stories that they already know, and then we use Humans of Dublin to raise awareness through real life stories. So I'm starting to specialize, and this is how I'm disconnecting from the Humans of New York team, is that I'm starting to focus on raising awareness through real life stories. So I would highlight 5 or 7 people on a specific topic, and they can open up and truly tell their experiences rather than featuring opinions. We create human stories. We talk about human stories.
Do you have kind of and I hate to put it this way, but do you have a way that you, for lack of a better way of putting it, profile, to know which people to talk to? In other words, are there certain signs that you can see that will tell you whether or not you think somebody's going to be the type that would open up to you, or do you just approach anybody that you think might be interesting and just hope that they're willing to talk to you?
Yeah, so as I said in the beginning, it was working a little differently. I was making 8 to 12 interviews a day, and from those, only 2 or 3 would make it to the page. So what I do is like I truly slow down, open up, and I try to make the best of every interview every people I came across. And sometimes it can last for about 20 minutes, sometimes it can last for 1 hour. But there is no way that I will not come out from an interview with a story in my head. So what I usually do, I have a recorder and I record the whole interview. And after I would come home and I would sit down and interview till I have the finished piece that is the strong story,
Now, at this point, you've must have been introduced to like this wide array of humanity. What do you think has been your most groundbreaking or personally enlightening takeaway from all this?
It's going to sound like a cliche, but it's so true that, first of all, everyone has a story, and everyone is facing difficulties in their lives. It's just a different level of approach for everyone, and people in general, they want to share their stories. Probably these are the most important. Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because I've had this conversation with my father before where, you look at somebody and there's a surface image some people have, and you think everything is perfect on the surface, or it looks very polished and perfect and pretty. But the reality is everybody does have their issues and challenges, or have had to overcome challenges to get to that point.
That's right. Yes. So many of the people are in our island as well, especially around. That's why I like to highlight specific topics at this stage, because you can highlight a specific theme, and you can approach it for all different angles and see that like even the same problem can be solved or faced in different ways by different people.
So here's what I want to do. I wanted to talk to you about how you're doing things now a little bit. I want to talk to you also about some specific stories, but I want to do that. We've got to go to a quick commercial break. Can you stick around for the second half of the show?
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll come right back with Peter Varga. And we are back with Peter Varga of Humans of Dublin. So tell me a little bit about, what do you think you've learned about what it means to be human through these stories?
Well, the most important thing I would say is the importance of practice empathy. Like without empathy, you will not able to create a visual field what humanity is and what your community is made of, or what your state or what your country is made of. It's really important to sometimes to take yourself out of your shoes and put yourself into someone else's shoes, and then practice it every single day. Because if you do that, you will able to realize that the world is not only black and white. It's like mostly lingering between the gray matter, if you know what I mean. So since I started Humans of Dublin, I learned to form opinions much slower, and maybe not to have that strong opinions from almost any topic, because I know that each experience create a reason to be in that field, if you know what I mean.
In the same token, would you say that you've learned anything specific about Ireland and its people through their collective stories? Because you said earlier you're from Hungary, right?
Yes. Well, the one thing, like I always like to say about Irish people, that probably if I would start out in Hungary with the same project, I probably would not be where I am today, because the Irish people are so open to talk about. They have this the pop culture. They like to share stories, and there are also lots of people from different countries who made their first step to move out of their comfort zone and come to another country. So those people are obviously much more open to create new connections, even off the streets, that a guy just approached them with a camera.
Is there a story or a person that you featured, or who you featured, that has impacted you the most, or perhaps in a way that was most unique?
Yeah, so there were two early features that they really impacted me in terms of they went viral as well. One of them was a guy he was just going to buy some candy, and he met a guy sitting on the ledge of the bridge and about to jump, and he decided that he's just going to stop and ask the guy what is going on with him. And then they started to talk, and eventually he was able to get him off from the bridge, and their ways parted for a while, but they kept in touch over the phone. And later that year, it turned out that the guy had a child, and contacted the little guy that he named the child after him, because he was the one who saved his life. That was one of those stories that really stands out.
We never really get to hear about how you found any particular person or how you started the conversation. Do you have an approach story that's kind of stuck with you?
Approach story? No. Well, I have obviously a technique how I approach people, and the interesting thing about it is I never actually tell them about the interview part. I usually say that I'm working on a photography project where I have to collect portraits of random people on the streets. Do you mind if I take your portrait? And obviously it's all about your energy as well, how you approach people. But they usually say yes. And once I have the picture, I show it to them. and I tell them that I actually have to connect a couple of sentences for each portrait. So do you mind if I ask you one or two questions? And obviously, because we are already in connection, I made a picture, they would open up a little bit better. And then it's all about, again, making them feel comfortable and show that you are truly interested in them.
Now, I know that you've worked with a lot of nonprofits. What has that been like? And have you felt like some success stories came about from these events?
Absolutely. So I can't even remember now anymore. Like, I'm doing Humans of Dublin for about 5 years now, and I had so many partnerships. Not only, like, what I'm trying to specialize is to raise awareness for certain topics, but we had a couple of charity projects that we were able to create a book, another book that we were publishing that became part of the local history section of the library. We were able to create offline exhibitions. We were able to raise thousands and thousands of euros for different charities, and probably that's why, because people can see that how effective it's much better than an advertisement. You really feature human stories, and people are able to connect with them much better on a completely different level. And because of that, these partnerships are the most successful. I really enjoy working with charities and different organizations.
Now, we touched upon COVID and the virus a little bit earlier in the show. How has it specifically affected your work? Obviously, it's difficult to come up and approach people. It is tough to get a portrait with a mask on.
Yeah, so obviously it's really affected my work, especially early in March. But there were multiple reasons why I decided not to go ahead and approach people on the streets anymore. Not only because of the social distancing part, but also because my wife was already pregnant at the time. Whenever the whole lockdown came in, I kind of took a different approach. In the beginning, I tried to create the interviews online, but when I saw that it doesn't really work out, I started to focus on spending more time with my family and focusing on partnerships where people highlight interviews for me, and I would go directly to that person. I take the portraits with the social distancing in place, and after we would finish it up, or with social distancing in person or online. So it changed a lot, because since March I actually haven't been out on the streets to approach people in a classical way.
Now, having to be Humans of Ireland, have you learned anything new about being human through this different process that you have to go through now? I mean, for me, lockdown has proven just how badly I think humans need physical contact and connection. I mean, even the introverts, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Well, probably I'm trying to highlight soon. I'm planning to work with another organization as well, who is responsible for elderly people and loneliness. And I really want to highlight the people, and then maybe the heroes throughout the lockdowns who were able to provide not only helping to do the shopping for elderly people, but helping them with all different ways not to make them too lonely. So that would be a really interesting other project as well.
Now, are there other projects or events that you're also currently working on?
So yeah, I was working in a direct provision. I'm not sure if you heard about direct provision in Ireland for asylum seekers who would come into the country. They would have to be part of the direct provision centers until they get asylum in Ireland. So their situation is obviously very different at the moment with COVID as well, and they need for donations. So I partnered up with an Instagram page who are organizing donation packages for these people, and then they put me in touch with some of the asylum seekers to tell their stories, to create a little empathy around their stories as well, and for people to understand in Ireland where they are coming from and what kind of backgrounds and struggles they had to go through to get to Ireland.
Now, what can we expect to see from you in the future? Have you got, are there things that you have kind of off even a little bit further, hopefully once the lockdowns are over?
Yeah, so my idea would be to continue doing Humans of Dublin and develop a place where people can come to practice empathy and to raise awareness through real life stories.
What is the best way for people to follow you and your work?
Absolutely. So on Instagram, it's Humans of Dub, at Humans of Dub, and on Facebook is the Humans of Dublin. I have, I think, 200,000 followers, and accounting with a weekly reach that I'm really proud of, organic reach of 450,000 people a week. Throughout the years, I developed a community that is very positive and very supporting. So whoever gets featured, I am always sure that they're going to receive very positive comments and messages, which is a very rare place in this day and age.
Especially on social media. I mean, people are so critical on social media. And the interesting thing is I've looked, I've looked at, both, Humans of Dublin, Humans of New York, and I'm surprised. I don't want to say I'm surprised because of the way that it's done in both cases, but especially even in yours, because the empathy factor. I think it invites more empathy. The way that from a photojournalist standpoint, the way that you approach these things, in a world in which social media is full of trolls, in which people are so mean-spirited in so many ways. But like I said, I was surprised, but yet I wasn't, at how empathetic and supportive people have been on this particular medium in comparison to a lot of others, I guess is a better way of putting it.
That's why I'm saying that I didn't even start. Like, I used to have a Twitter page, but Twitter is becoming a place that it's not welcoming enough for a project like this. So I almost completely removed myself. I'm still posting in there, but I think on Facebook and on Instagram, probably conversation is much more positive. This is a kind of like Humans of Dublin it taught so much to me, like it changed my life so much, like I used to work in a coffee shop before I started this project, and for me work was going into work every single day, 8 hours, making coffee, going home tired and having lunch. Since I started Humans of Dublin, I really feel that I have purpose. And then with the whole community around Humans of Dublin as well, it's just an amazing experience. I don't feel like working. In the past 5 years, I didn't work community. It's something that not too many people able to say,
Well, I think in that last statement you just made, I think I just got my bio on you for my Humans of the Weekly show. A snapshot of you. So thank you, Peter, so much for joining us. I know that it was kind of difficult connecting because we're on different sides of the globe, but that is one small benefit of having the show this way is I'm able to be able to do interviews with people that never would have been able to make it to my set. And I've really enjoyed having you on. Thank you so much for joining us, Peter.
It's a pleasure, David. Thank you so much for having me.
Take care. That is our show for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks again to Peter Varga from Humans of Dublin for being on the show tonight, taking us home. My son, Gianni.